Hey guys, welcome to Large Density Hair Transplant Center. Myself Dr. Gajanan Jadhao. Today we are going to discuss with a very important topic of hair transplantation. We'll discuss about density in hair transplantation. So everybody is looking for a good density after hair transplantation. Everybody would like to have a density which is natural and with very high packed density. So as we say, we are a large density, or the name represents density. That doesn't implicate for everyone. So density is depend on patient to patient. So everybody doesn't get the same density what everybody want to have. So we will start with the topic: what are the factors which causes good density and which factors which gives you little less density. So coming to a point, key role is played by a doctor who is doing a transplant. So at the time of extraction of the graft, harvesting of the graft, if the quality of graft is good, the doctor has to extract good quality of the graft, good number of the graft, so that he can use those graft for the maximum coverage and maximum density. So while extraction, like in FEV, you do a motorized extraction. In that time, if doctors extract a graft which are poor quality, one thing, or single hair follicles only, and while extraction he does a transaction of the graft, like suppose there are 3 or 4 hair follicles per unit, then if we transact 2 to 3 out of that, then ultimate density is going to be little less. So it's operator dependent, that means doctor dependent density is there, like whether doctor is going to do a good extraction or a bad extraction, one thing. In FUT, usually technicians are doing this slivering technique and they are just dissecting the graft from the skin. So in that case, it is more of technician dependent, where if some technician are damaging the graft while doing a slivering of the graft, at that time it might cause a damage to the grafts. Then it comes to a implantation technique. 1 square centimeter area, how many grafts you are going to implant or how many hair you are going to implant, that will decide the density. So everybody who is going to create a slits or who is going to do a implantation your scalp, that will be decided at that time of doing a implantation. So one graft contains 3 or 4 hair follicle, it will give a better density, but those people who don't have that number of the graft, only single hair follicle, that will not give that kind of density. Coming to a slit technique, where we do a slitting first, we decide a hole first. So 1 square centimeter area, usually the safe density is around 50 grafts per square centimeter area. Why I am saying safe? There are 2 reasons. First reason is, when you do a slitting, there may be a damage to a skin when you put very close, very high density. There may be a skin necrosis, there may be a blackening of the skin, one thing that might lead to a damage, and you might need a plastic surgery to recover those things. So that has happened before. These also, those who are striving for the very high density transplants, right? There is limited blood supply to some particular area of the skin, that might damage that only artery or whatever the supply is there, it might damage that and it will land up into having a blackening of the skin, but necrosis. Okay, coming to a point where once you decide that you want to have a 50 graft per square centimeter, doctor is the same but patient is different. He has decided that I'm going to give you 50 graft density. So now come to a point where you might damage while implantation. So if 3 hair follicles are there in the per graft, you might end up while implanting damage to the hair roots. That might lead to a little less density. This is second thing. So this is related to a doctor and his team. Coming to a patient's point, when you connect with the patient and you see that what quality and quantity of donor we have. Suppose one patient is having only single hair follicle or maximum 2 hair follicle in a per unit or per graft, then ultimately when we have decided to put 50 grafts per square centimeter, the density is ultimately going to be a 50 or maximum 100 in such cases, right? So ultimate density is not going to be that dense, not going to be that natural. See, normal in Indian scheme, in Indian patients, normal hair density, I'm talking about hair density, is approximately 150 to 200 hair per square centimeter. This is what natural Indians see. North has got little more density and south has got little less density, but the thickness of hair varies. Okay, so now coming to our next point. So what decide the density is thickness of your shaft, that is hair shaft. Suppose somebody has got very silky hair and somebody has got very thick hair. So ultimately the thick hair will occupy the more area. If you put, suppose, in 1 square centimeter area, you got the same quantity of hair. You put around 150 hair here also in a thin hair patient and in a thick hair patient. So thick hair patient will have naturally more density because the thickness and its coverage is more. So reflection of the light will be little less. So ultimately the second factor is this. Third factor is going to be your color of your hair. So black color absorb more light compared to a gray and white color or golden color. So those naturally having a very black color will show more density compared to those having a light color, gray color or some golden hair color, right? So these factors are more dependent on patient. So we have discussed 3 factors in the patient and 2 factors in a doctor way. Like if doctor is the same but patient is a different, then there will be little less density. If patient is good but doctor is not well experienced and qualified, then there might be a problem in the density. Okay, so do you really go for a maximum density every time? See, coming to a point of density, when you are a grade 7, like completely bought from front to back side, your minimum graft requirement is going to be approximately 7,000. This is minimum what we are talking about. And see, when you consider a donor area, the scalp area, you might get around 4,000 to 5,000 in a lifetime. Some patient might not get that number of the graft. Then you have to compromise on the density here, right? We have to manage your baldness within this 4,000, 5,000 grafts. So either you might get a density or you might not get the coverage. Either we have to choose. So experienced doctor will do some alteration in the hairline, some modification in the density, like front density little higher with medium density in the middle and back side. So that experience plays a role here. So how to look better, how to look good with a little less number of the graft also is all depend on doctor's experience. So this is not every time is doctor is going to responsible for the density. What you desire might not be the what you are going to get, because everybody doesn't have the same kind of donor area. Doctor might be the same, but donor is not as good as your friend or your colleague or your maybe some relative had got very good result from one center, but you are not getting the same result. This is what it is, right? So in the future also, if you keep on taking good support of medicines, that might sustain your density for the future also. Like what I am talking about is a role of minoxidil and finasteride even after the surgery. Like we have seen, like over the period of years, some patients are getting some thinning over the period of 4-5 years. So if you keep on using something to support the hair roots, like minoxidil at a 1-day basis or only night you can use, or finasteride maybe in a very low dose twice a week or 0.25 milligram per day, that will create a good impact on your hair and it might sustain your density for a longer period of time. Okay, coming to the techniques. So when it was only an FUE technique and only a FUT technique initially, so that time also the duration of the surgery is very high. Like some patients are going for 12-hour surgery, 15-hour surgery. I have recently had one incidence of 18 hours of the surgery for 4,000 grafts. So this ultimately going to damage the integrity of the grafts. So whatever the graft survival will not be there. Maybe after 1 or 2 years, the graft will lose his integrity, his thickness, and ultimately someday the graft will shed. So important is the technique, what you are going to do it right now. So this is my sincere request to those are newcomer in a hair transplantation. They try to go for a giga session. Even I was doing so many giga session initially. Now I have switched the technique to a real-time FUE. What is the real-time FUE? Basically, the benefit of real-time FUE is for more of for the newcomers, those don't have the speed of doing a hair transplantation. Like suppose you are taking out 1000 grafts for maybe you're taking 2 hours of extraction and maybe 4-5 hours for implantation. So for you guys, the technique is a real-time FUE. You extract 200 grafts and try to implant those grafts. So you will also not be get tired. One thing, patient will not be get exhausted, and you can have a limitation of the graft per day. You can do it gradually. You can end up your session within 6 to 7 hours, and you can do one more session on the next day. So important is patient benefit has to be there. You need to explain to the patient about the graft survival. After 6 hours, graft survival start. Graft death rate starts after 6 hours of the time, and approximately 10% it is. So try to understanding, we need to have a patient benefit first. Okay, patient will be ready for those cases when you feel that the patient's results will be better when the graft outer time will be less. So this is what it is about the hair transplant density. So be keen for a density, but don't go for a density as such, because last point I would like to stress upon is, if you go for very high density, even some graft may not survive, because there will survival of the fetus. There will be a competition between the grafts, which will be survive, which will be die. So that is very important. Trust your doctors, discuss openly with the doctors. What is the limitation? What are you expecting from the transplant? And it should be a naturalistic and realistic approach toward the transplant. So, hope you have understood the what is the all about the density, how you can get the density. So, thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned. See you next time. Thanks a lot.